Okay, well, good morning everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Sally Hurst. And as they mentioned, I am a Macquarie alumni, but only very recently, it was only a few months ago that I actually finished my Masters of Research here. But before that, I started here in 2017 as a fresh little undergrad, and I was studying a Bachelor of Science majoring in Paleobiology and a Bachelor of Arts majoring in Egyptian Archaeology. Now, my Master's focused on those two subjects as well, with a bit of science communication mixed in, but I will chat about that a little bit later. And as these guys mentioned, I was also a student ambassador, so talking at events just like this one, heading to schools to see you and talk all about university. And among my other many jobs, I also work at the Australian Museum as an education presenter. So this job lets me talk about dinosaurs all day. I get to lead tours around the museum and, as you can see, operate a giant dinosaur puppet as well. Now, Lauren also mentioned that I am something called a superstar of STEM. Now, this isn't just a fancy honorary title, but it is actually a position with Science and Technology Australia. And it's a program that aims to raise the public profile of women in STEM so we can smash gender assumptions. And so girls and women all around Australia and the world can look at me and other scientists and go, I can do that too. And the final title that was mentioned was that I'm the founder of something called the Founder Fossil Project. Now, you're not meant to know what this is, it's very niche, but I'll talk about it a little bit later on. But this is a company that I founded as part of my Masters of Research project, but I will chat about that more later. Now, when my boss actually asked me to do this event, because I still actually work within the Future Students team here at Macquarie, he asked me to speak at this event, and I was honestly a bit surprised. I admit I think I've done a lot of cool things, but I wouldn't really consider myself a leader. I've travelled a lot, I've had some amazing opportunities, but unfortunately they stopped giving out leadership badges after high school, and so it can be pretty hard to see yourself as a leader until someone actually points out that you are. Now, when I was asked to do this talk, it did mean that I actually had to have a think about what does being a leader mean to me. But before I go into what being a leader means to me now, I want to go back in time a little bit, before university, as it was a lot of these experiences which influenced my perception of what a leader is and has guided me on my path to where I am now. So a bit of a, I'm not going to give it away yet, pop quiz. I come from a very small town which you've never heard of, but I went to a school close by, about 40-minute drive away, which is characterised by the Police Academy, the Big Merino, and the Supermax Prison. Where am I from? Goulburn, yes, well done. Now, Goulburn is characterised by all these things, especially the Big Merino, very famous. So my high school was in this rural town, about 3 hours away from Sydney, and I was quite lucky that I did actually love my high school journey. I had a really good group of friends, I was a house leader, I was doing sports, and there was lots of things going on. But the drawbacks of living somewhere like Goulburn, which is quite far away, is that my school was so small that we couldn't actually offer a number of science classes just because there weren't enough people. We didn't actually have a careers advisor, which really sucked. And when Canberra was the main university town over an hour away from us, it very much seemed like there were limited options of where we could go and what we could do after high school. Now, when I was in year 12, and even now, and I'm sure you can all relate to this, I was being asked that dreaded question of what do you want to do after high school? It seems that every careers advisor, teacher, cousin, friend, and relative is going to be asking you this, and they usually expect you to have an answer. Now, I acknowledge the fact that most of you are probably 17 and 18 years old, and you are not meant to have it all figured out. If you do know what your next step is, that's brilliant, but when I was in year 12, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do, and it was an incredibly stressful time not having an answer to this question. Now, when I was trying to figure out what do I actually want to do with my life, I started thinking about, okay, what are the things that I like doing? What were the subjects that I enjoyed doing at school? So I really liked things like reading and writing in English, so I thought maybe going into a publishing career would be cool. Getting paid to read books all day sounded pretty nice. But unfortunately, the only similar course I could find in publishing was a Bachelor of Journalism at a completely different university. Now, because I wasn't sold completely on that idea, I ended up taking a gap year. I deferred the offer that I had, and during that time I actually took like a weekend online journalism course. And thank God I did, because I absolutely hated it. It just wasn't for me. And so before I'd even started university, I dropped out and was back to square one. So after another 6 months, when I started thinking about, right, what else do I like doing? I came up with the fact that I loved my ancient history classes in Year 12, and I also had a job at the National Dinosaur Museum in Canberra. Yes, that is a place. I'm actually in this photo underneath the giant T-Rex. So I loved my job there, so I was like, right, let's try and find somewhere where I can study dinosaurs and dead things. Now, you can imagine doing that Google search, there was very few results that came up, but it was how I discovered Macquarie University. Now, before doing this Google search, I'd never even heard of Macquarie University. For my school in Goulburn, any university in Sydney just wasn't really on our radar. I think there was 2 people in my year, including me, who came to Sydney for university, maybe 5 who went to Canberra, and 1 or 2 to Wollongong or Melbourne. So pretty slim picking. So moving to Sydney for university was a pretty big deal back then. But it was after coming to open day, actually. I visited the campus a total of 1 time before I decided that this was where I wanted to be. And so I said yes to my offer, I packed my bags and I moved to Sydney. And what a journey it has been. Now, many of you likely think that coming to university is all study, study, study. And look, it is a lot of that, but it is also so much more, and your journey is very much what you make it. So while my classes included things like learning how to write Egyptian hieroglyphs and calculating the running speed of a dinosaur, which is the only time I've ever used algebra, it also was a time when I said yes to as many things as possible. It was when I got my first role at the Australian Museum about 4 years ago now, when I still work there. It was a time when I said yes to working at an art exhibition on Cockatoo Island, because why not? I got to go on an archaeological dig in Ireland looking for a medieval castle. I somehow managed to travel to 18 different countries during my degree. Still don't know how I managed it. And it was a time that I became a surfer, a scuba diver, and a free diver. So I'm very proud to say that I've now swum with great white sharks and even humpback whales. But it was also a time that I really could have used a role model or a leader. Now, don't get me wrong, I love being seen by people as, an adventurous or pioneering woman, but it can also be exhausting. A lot of the times when I was trying new things or traveling to new places, it was really scary. It was a time that on my first overseas solo trip, my passport, my phone and my camera were stolen. On the first day, no less. It was a time when, and still now, I've realised that I have done a degree so niche that getting a job could be quite difficult. And it was also a time that all of us were dealing with a global pandemic. Now, looking back, a lot of those things were made easier when you had someone else there who was already doing the things that you wanted to be doing, that you had a path to follow. So maybe you had leaders in your family, in your community, or even leading your country. And I mean Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, not Australia. Now, things can be a whole lot easier if you see someone there, that you're visible. And so if someone sees you being a leader, they can go, they're doing that, I can do that as well. Now, I was very lucky to be raised by some very strong women. So shout out to my mum. She runs the farm still where I grew up, and she raised 2 daughters all by herself. and my sister here as well, she started a cow photography business. I promise it's a thing. At the age of 18, and she's been a successful businesswoman ever since. But within science and archaeology, the two fields that I really had my heart set on, there was very few people who I could actually look up to and be like, yes, this is something that I want to do and a pathway that I can follow. And think about yourselves. Have you ever met a paleontologist or an archaeologist apart from me? And Jurassic Park and Indiana Jones do not count. Now, this was definitely something that was on my mind when I was graduating from my undergraduate degree. Was there someone whose path I could see, or a career that I could see that I wanted? Now, for a lot of it, the answer was no, but it did get me thinking that, is there other people out there who could also use a role model or have a visible pathway to where I am? And that's not necessarily being a paleontologist or an archaeologist, but it could be to leave home, moving to a different country or a different city, to see that a career in STEM and science can be great and fulfilling, and even just to see that they can also be adventurous and fearless. Now, it was at this time that I started getting involved in programs like Curious Minds and the Harding Miller Education Foundation. Now, these programs match girls from rural areas or facing financial difficulty with a coach, who was me, and I can hopefully be a role model for them into the future. Now, for the Harding Miller girls, I have 5 of them that I mentor. I met them in Year 9 when they were in Year 9, and they are now graduating Year 12 this year. So hopefully over those 4 years, I have been even just a little bit of a role model, and so they can see a pathway to university and that they can achieve anything that they want to do. Now, it was also during this time that I started my Skype a Scientist program. Now, Skype Scientist matches different classrooms from all around the world with scientists just like me. And so I've spoken to classrooms in India, in Canada, in Thailand, in Vietnam. And I get to basically show them that being a scientist is not all old white guys in lab coats. And so if anything else, that's definitely one thing I hope to have achieved. Now, it was at this time, with almost finishing my undergraduate degree, that I realised, God damn, I have a lot of hobbies and interests, I have a lot of passions, but I still have no idea what I want to do next. It's kind of like Year 12 all over again. And it actually took me months to figure out that I just wasn't quite finished with studying, and so this is when I started my Masters of Research and something called the Found a Fossil project. Now, a Masters is something you do after your undergraduate degree. Masters of Research are generally the first year you do normal classes, and the second year you write a 20,000 word thesis. And yes, I signed up for that voluntarily. Now, during this time, I wanted to combine my passions of paleontology, archaeology, and science communication. So the science faculty here actually supported me to do that, and this led to the creation of the Found a Fossil project. Now, the project basically asks Australians, if you ever found a fossil or an Indigenous artefact, maybe on a farm, on a bushwalk at the beach, what would you actually do with it? Would you tell anyone about your find? Now, this is probably something that you've never even thought of before, you along with the rest of Australia, but it is an important question to ask if we want to protect this heritage into the future. Now, starting the Found a Fossil project, it was very scary. Nothing had ever been done like this before. Usually archaeology and paleontology are seen as very separate things, even though the basis is that you're digging stuff up. But while most people during a master's thesis will kind of stick to writing their 20,000 word thesis, I decided I would go an extra step and I would found a company. I would design a website, even though I had no previous website design or creation skills. I created an outreach program as part of this, teaching people about fossils and artefacts, which actually got funding by the Australian Geographic Society. And at the same time, I was able to speak at 3 different conferences, including one in New Zealand, which is a great excuse for a holiday. I got to do paleontology fieldwork at Lightning Ridge and in the Flinders Ranges. And I even got published in different magazines, such as the Australian Government's Indigenous.gov website. Now, This project actually allowed me to connect with over 1,000 people who contributed to this project, and it is still ongoing. So hopefully later this year, I will be traveling around Australia to do this outreach program for the first time. Now that I've finished my Masters of Research, I'm again at the stage where people are asking that horrible question of what are you going to do next? And again, I still have no idea. I think a lot of people think that, like, yeah, you're an adult, you must have things figured out. We're all pretending it's all a lie. But for me, people will ask, oh, so do you want to do a PhD? Absolutely not. I've had more than enough of writing. Do you want to get a 9-to-5 job? Absolutely not. That sounds like being an adult, and I refuse. So instead, this year, I'm actually doing Gap Year 2.0. I've already been to the Maldives to go swimming with sharks and go surfing. I'll be doing a number of international conferences again, heading to Canada in a few months to go dig up some dinosaurs, and then also heading back to Tonga to swim with some whales again. So while it may not be that linear progression that a lot of people think a career after university is, it sounds pretty damn good. Now, a lot of you are probably asking, what does all this have to do with me? I've shown you a lot of cool things, but what does this actually have to do with leadership? Now, my perception of leadership, thinking about this question, very much led me to the fact that I think leadership is what you make it. Hopefully, by making these experiences and these adventures, the challenges and the triumphs that I've had more visible, maybe that will just inspire you to think that you can do it as well. So hopefully from this, you will start saying yes to things that scared you before. Maybe you will explore more passions and discover new ones. And hopefully, maybe just one of you will think about becoming a paleontologist or an archaeologist. So leadership for me, it was very much following your passions, being visible, and saying yes to all of those different things. So as you all go on and you start or you continue to be leaders in your communities and in your schools, maybe you are planning to come to university next year, maybe you're planning to go on a gap year, maybe you are just hoping to be or continue being that ambitious and driven and vibrant human being that we know you are. Hopefully other people will see that and go, I can do that as well. So now this could be from your younger siblings to the people in the years below you at school, to your parents, to everyone you may meet along your journey on the way. You are already a role model and a leader. So sometimes being a leader is just showing up. So thank you all for showing up today, for representing your schools and your triumphs. And thank you for from all of us here, for we see the good that you are all doing. And we are very excited that you are the next generation of leaders, and we are very excited to see what you do next. Thank you.